everybody. It's Sunday night. The name of the show is Intuitive Inc. And I am Servette Hassan because Halloween is coming up just a couple of weeks away, a very spooktacular show for you because we've got to do that every year and we've done it a little early and I don't care because we've got a really great guest. Her name is Deborah Castellano and she's a witch and an unapologetic witch, which I like, which is lovely because we should all be our true selves. Anyway, Deborah's a writer and a crafter and a glamour girl, which comes in very handy because she's written a book called Glamour Magic. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Glamour Magic, the Witchcraft Revolution to get what you want. So this is it's always important for us to figure out which way to go. No pun intended. But we need to figure out how to get what we want. That's what it's all about. So we've got someone who's going to help us figure that out, but in a beautiful way. Because ladies, this is the time to get your glam on and meet Deborah Castellano. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for being with me tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you. It's Sunday night. You're calling from Bridgewater, New Jersey. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking time out to talk to us even. That's lovely. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, well, it's going to go quick. And we are going to open up the show for questions. If anybody has any questions about this, you're going to find the questions will come as we start talking because there's a lot more to glamour than you think. And there's a lot more to glamour contributing to your great work and getting what you want than you think there is. So, because there's all kinds of fabulous stories in this book too, just about kings and queens and Joan of Arc and all kinds of other stuff. But before we get to that, Deborah, I want to know, how did this all begin? Where did you start? How did you end up moving it? Because this is your first book and it's called Glamour Magic, which I love. So what started it? Where'd you begin?
Well, I noticed glamour wasn't often talked about in the magical community, and I feel like there's a definite need for it. And I find, even more interestingly, that much of the magic community is kind of resistant to it. If we're talking about it's how you present yourself physically, it's how you present yourself on an intellectual level, it's your energy, it's a lot of different factors.
Right.
And I got really interested in it because when you think about magic, you think about that glamour work, which often in modern society translates into like a Hollywood special effect. And I'm like, okay, well, if obviously we can't manage that to, just ta-da, we look like a different person, how can we utilize it, to be part of our practice?
Right. Well, okay, but go back a little further. When did your practice start? When did you know that you were part of that community? I know that you write for you're contributed to quite a few occult kind of media, such as Witchvox and Pagan Square, Witches and Pagans, that kind of thing. When did this start for you? Was it something that you've always been drawn to, and then got involved in the practice, and that's just been your spiritual practice your whole life?
No, I've been practicing now for 20 years. When I was in college, I was taking classes about women in religion, and one of our assignments was to attend a religious ceremony in a faith that was not our own. And at the time, I was a practicing Catholic. So my friend at the time, her stepmom, was part of and is part of a Dianic coven. So since I couldn't go to the service a lot of other people were going, I had a conflict on my schedule. So I went to Circle instead. And while I definitely had some little bits and bots like tarot and, really into the Craft movie, stuff like that. Interestingly enough, I kind of joke that I have kind of a Hermione Granger approach to it because I took it for class. And then I got really interested. I really liked being in a woman's space. I really liked the way circle was set up. And then I started doing more work, and I started looking into druidry. And now, like, my personal practice is very eclectic. But that was how I got started.
Wow.
For school.
Okay. Well, there you go. You never know. You know, I accidentally took a journalism class when I was 19 years old. My girlfriend couldn't go, and she'd already paid for it at UCLA, so I went. So,
oh, wow. So that really worked out.
Well, same thing with you. Look at this, you know, same thing. You found, you know, the universe has a funny way of you know, like putting you in the right place at the right time when you just sort of go with the flow, and you're just, okay, well, I'll go there and try that. And you did, you know, and then look what happened.
Absolutely.
It resonated with, there was something in your bones that knew, you know?
I think so, for sure. It was a very moving experience for me from the moment I stepped foot in there. And then, you know, again, as I said, over the last 20 years, my practice just kind of kept expanding.
Right.
And my work, you know, changed and ebbed and flowed. But it did really put me in the right place at the right time. And it's been a real strong part of my life for a very long time now.
Well, yeah, I mean, Deborah, I really don't think there are any accidents. I mean, there are no accidents in life. You know, everything happens for a reason. And you were guided in that direction. And it's, you know, I have great reverence for any practice. I don't really actually adhere to any one specifically. My spiritual practice is very eclectic. But, you know, anything that points you in a direction that makes you, you know, grow spiritually, that's the point. And witchcraft just has such a bad name, and it's so silly because it's been around forever. You know, it's just a basic core, you know, belief, and there's nothing woo-hooey about it if you really get deep, you know. So,
and if you get really deep with that, many world religions have a folkloric aspect to it.
Definitely.
Like in Catholicism and Judaism and a lot of like major world religions, even though they would certainly never call it witchcraft, it kind of is.
I know, you know, you're right. You're so good point, because yes, and then part of my practice is to study all these. So I've chanted and I've gone to temple and I've done, and you're right. And they all have some underlying theme there. So anyway, let's talk about glamour now, because glamour can have an interesting connotation to a lot of people too. So, and I like your definition of it. So explain that, because I know, you know, if you look it up in Webster's, it's an illusionary kind of thing. And that's not the definition you were taking, right? Yeah.
Right. It's primarily defined as a false magic, but there's a secondary definition that goes with it, that is what makes you interesting and exciting to yourself and others. Now, when most people think about glamour, they're thinking about a very specific image. They're thinking about like Marilyn Monroe or someone like that. And while that's certainly someone who, yes, is glamorous, it's also separate from beauty. I mean, for, again, going back to kind of Marilyn Monroe, that very iconic glamour, if she was just another pretty face, if she didn't have that certain something, that je ne sais quoi, that, you know, spark, that glamour, she may have just been married to like a Hollywood producer, you know, and not have had, you know, such a career and all of this other stuff. There was always, when people talk about her, they always say there was something about her. And that's glamour. Glamour is that something about you. It's not just beauty, because beauty is a very static concept. It's how symmetrical your face is. It's cultural markers. Glamour is something a lot more ephemeral, and that to me is what makes it exciting.
Well, exactly. Because I know it can be Marilyn Monroe, but it could, or Audrey Hepburn even, who does it more in a classier way. But I know very, very glamorous people who are not necessarily attractive, But they're very glamorous.
Yeah, who wouldn't be considered like conventionally, what's in the media right now. Yeah, that has glamour. You're right. You're absolutely right. It has very little to do with that. Yeah.
Right. And I saw one woman the other day. She's she's a model, and she's in her 70s or 80s, and this silver hair that's just gorgeous with one black stripe down the front, or one dark stripe down the front, and she's wearing this like really cool outfit. She's glamorous.
Yeah.
And she's in her 70s. I mean, she's the type of person that would walk in a room and be in a room and you couldn't help but look at her. You would just be drawn to that, right?
Right. Like, I think of Maggie Smith, who is the Dowager Countess. She's got that certain something, and she's the Dowager Countess in Downton Abbey, but also she was one of the professors in Harry Potter.
Right.
And she is, I think, also in her 80s, and she is still looking real fabulous, and everyone always talks about Helen Mirren, and it's not. I like talking about the cast of Orange is the New Black, because you're dealing with so many different body types. You're dealing with so many different backgrounds and sizes and shapes, and they were all on a show,
That's right.
Something for that.
Right. And so really it is what makes you interesting and exciting. And glamour too has even gotten just a kind of bad name too, because I think you touched on it in your book too. I think at some point women even, especially women, felt like that if you had substance, that you didn't need that. That actually if you were trying to be glamorous, you were a tart or a whore or something. It was, well, you're the bad girl if you're doing that, And that's not true.
And it didn't used to be that way, even not that long ago. I'm listening right now on CD to one of Carrie Fisher's memoirs, and she talks about her mother, Debbie Reynolds, getting ready to go out on the town, and, there's a wig, there's these false eyelashes, and no one was saying she was a tart. No one would ever call Debbie Reynolds a tart.
No, she was really, and she was glamorous. She was.
Right.
I
Very much so.
Yeah, exactly. But there is this, and you talk about this too, the how to be bad while being good. Right.
Yeah, because I feel like those are the two tropes we kind of have to choose from, regardless of your gender identity. It's either you're a good girl, and a good girl is patient and waits and always does the right thing, because eventually in some way it's going to pay off, except sometimes I've seen real life good girls who that didn't happen for, and that makes you real bitter. And then there's the bad girl who does not follow the unwritten rules of society, and does what she wants to do. But the downside to that is that society is kind of structured to throw you down for that if you are doing things that differently and getting good results for it, there's a lot of envy and jealousy, and the moment someone gets a chance to take you down, they're gonna. And if you've got all these people gunning for you,
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, so now we know what glamour is, or at least I feel I know what glamour is. And one of the things you said is in the book too, is glamour is not a flame, it's a bonfire. And I wrote that down because I liked it, because it's about bringing out that part of you that is interesting and exciting. But now, so if we are a good girl, let's say, I just saw this on the news today too, that there's another woman that's come out in this Harvey Weinstein thing, that's scandal. And, I see his picture and he sickens me. He turns my stomach. But there's this woman that came on who said, well, I never had a problem because I dressed conservatively. And it's the woman who's in The Big Bang Theory, and I don't know her name. She plays that, she's the scientist. Well, aren't they all? I think they're all.
Oh, is that,
oh God, I can't think of her name.
The girl who used to play Blossom, Maya Blahnik, something like that?
No, this is another one that's on the, she said that he did abuse her. This one's saying he never abused me because I dress conservatively. And I went, oh boy.
And that gets into a scary place so fast, and nothing's a protection. You know what I mean?
Right.
If someone is intent on causing another person harm, it kind of doesn't matter what you're wearing, you know, because they are intent on.
It doesn't matter what you're wearing. Yeah, it doesn't, and I agree. But so let's say we want to be glamorous. How do we bring that out in ourselves? Because I know you're talking about beauty, but it's obviously it's more than that. But how can someone bring out that glamour? Because, you know, I don't think it has to do with beauty necessarily, but it's about bringing out, and I think that the women that do this, even your picture, you just look glamorous, you know, and so
thank you.
You walk your talk based on your picture. So
I really try to.
Okay, so how did you do this? How did you figure out how to, you know, use a lot of historical character stories, which is great. You know, even like Anne Boleyn and this kind, and even Joan of Arc, as I mentioned in the beginning, you know. So what do you think it is that they tapped into that we can tap into to bring that out, that falling in love with yourself kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we're looking at, I think Anne Boleyn's a good example because, you know, there's a lot of stories about whether she was, you know, incredibly gorgeous or like, you know, this ugly, hideous girl, and it's hard to say which it was exactly. The truth is she was probably somewhere in the middle. She was probably an average-looking woman. It depended on who was writing the letters because if the ambassadors were from a country that didn't like her, you know, the reports weren't favorable, etc. But I think we're also used to, in this day and age, when we think of Anne Boleyn, I often think about Natalie Dormer, who played her in The Tudors, who has this like unearthly beauty going on that she practically glows.
But
she was good. The real Anne Boleyn, you know, she didn't. The standard for beauty at the time, at that particular moment, because it was always changing just like it is here, at that particular moment in time, you were supposed to be very fair-skinned, light-eyed, if at all possible, like blue, green, something like that. Ideally, like blonde hair. You were supposed to basically look like a royal milkmaid, for lack of a better way of putting it. And she didn't. She had dark hair. She had dark eyes. She had olive skin. And I think she kind of thought to herself, is it more important for me to look like the standard of beauty, or is it just more important for me to figure out how to get Henry to think that I'm the most beautiful woman in the world?
Right. Well, she did it. I mean... You know, I mean, I don't think it did have anything to do with her looks. I think it was just more her wit and charm and, you know, based on all the things I've read, she was very charming and witty and very, well, worldly. You know, she wasn't, she wasn't
and very educated, a good dancer, like a lot of things that were admired then. Like she was at the French court. The French court was considered the highest court in all of the lands that had the, you know, the best, you know, refinements and everything. So the fact that she came back from France, well, of course, there's always some talk about it too, because now you've gone and had an adventure, and that's, you know, mixed bag received at that time. But she knew how to catch his attention. I mean, he started out with her sister as his mistress. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was her family really or her, just because, again, it gets a little cloudy. We're talking a very long time ago, who decided that she wouldn't just be another royal mistress, that she was going to get him divorced, which was just about impossible at the time.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, and you never don't know, because it depends on what you read, that it was her, that it was her father, that it was, all these things.
Her uncle, someone always, and it could have been a combination of all of that,
Yeah. But, in the end, it has to be you. It has to be her, because it doesn't matter who's trying to talk you into whatever, but unless you're in it, because really there's a certain amount of conviction that has to go into whatever it is you're after,
Yeah, for her to actually pull it off, I'm totally with you. Like, it's a heist almost. Yeah. For her to get that going, I agree. She had to have been bought in, whether it was not her idea to begin with or always her idea or whatever. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't have been able to successfully do it, I don't think, if unless she was really all in.
No, right. And I wrote down another line that you wrote in the book too, which is, beauty is static, glamour is magic. And that's true. Yeah, explain that for people, because it's true. I feel it's true, but go ahead.
And another way I put it sometimes is that beauty is and glamour does. And what I mean by that is, beauty is a very passive thing. There's not a lot of stuff that you can do about your bone structure. There's not a lot of stuff you can do about your cultural markers. But glamour is where all the magic happens, and that's where you have a lot of control over it. It is completely artificial, which, again, in this current society, we're taught to, turn our noses up because everything is supposed to be natural and effortless, but anything worth doing is not natural and effortless, generally speaking.
What, you mean the way you look is supposed to be natural and effortless? Or
by society standard, yeah, we're all supposed to be natural beauties where, we woke up like this. What I mean?
Well, okay, I don't question agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all, and it's not that way in California. I'm not one of them, but most everybody here has fake boobs. So
totally.
So
totally. But you're supposed to pretend like somehow they're natural.
Real.
That's
okay,
the big.
I get it. Yeah.
That's the big pretense. Yeah. I just woke up and oh my God, I have 3 more cup sizes.
Yeah, exactly.
To go along with it.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. You're right. You're right. And then glamour is what you're saying then is beauty is and glamour does, because glamour is something you bring out. That it's something you have control over. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. So how do you have a lot of great exercises in this book as well, and I like.
Oh, thank you.
You talk about going through them in order, which is nice. We don't have to, but it's they kind of build on themselves. I think as you go.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening out there, the name of the book is Glamour Magic, The Witchcraft Revolution to Get What You Want. And the author is Deborah Castellano, and we've been talking to her about this. But one of the exercises, are about figuring out, define, first of all, because you talk about a lot in this book, great work, your work, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Great work is actually an alchemical term, but I use it sort of loosely. But it's the comparison I make to it is, what are you willing to go into the woods for? What are you willing to do? Anything within your moral compass? Let's not get crazy. Right. to accomplish. It's that thing that keeps you up at night, that burning desire that, from the Old Testament to a certain extent, sick with love am I, that kind of feeling. Mm-hmm. intensity, and it's really working to accomplish that. Now, I find it really interesting in my readers where either this step is the hardest step, which I totally get. Not everyone woke up with like a burning desire for whatever, be it a baby, a particular career, you know, for a house on a certain place, or, you know, some kind of creative pursuit. So if you don't know what it is, it can take a little time to settle into it. And that's perfectly valid too. It's okay if you don't know what it is yet. That's part of the work, is to figure it out. But if you do, if you're one of those psychos like myself, where you did wake up at like, you know, it's 7 or 8 years old and you knew you wanted this with all your heart, you know, it's really, what are you willing to give to get this? And what are you willing to sacrifice? And that sounds scary on the surface because you're thinking, ooh, you know, very dark and spooky. But the reality of what you're really sacrificing is things like, I wrote a lot of this book while, working at my day job, which is for an accounting firm. I wrote a lot of it during tax season. So we're talking, I would go to work for like 10 hours. I would come home, I would write, I'd eat something, I'd go to bed, I'd do it again like 6 days a week. And it was so grueling. I barely saw anyone. I barely saw any friends, any family, anything. And it was just, this is all you're doing. It's that chop wood, carry water thing. And it does burn things off you and it does transform you, but it is a difficult process. You're not tending to a lot of things that you would like to tend to. Like, I wasn't reading books during that time. I would like to, you know, but you can only do so many things in a day. There are often
but the thing about
in my sink, you know, stuff like that, like, you know.
The thing about that's why I tell people, whatever it is that you have that burning desire for, make sure you have that burning desire for it and not somebody else's telling you should, or you thought you should when you grew up that way. And because if you love what you're doing, it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing, even though you are, you know. It's like, cause I wrote, when my daughter was little, you know, as a single parent, and I did a day job and got her, you know, ready after the homework and dinner and did the bath time and then I wrote from 10 to midnight every night, 7 days a week for years.
Yep.
And I didn't
I know that grind.
And then I was up at 5:30 in the morning and we did it all again. And I would literally, if I didn't write from 10 to midnight one night, I might be okay. If I didn't write 2 nights, I would be kind of sick. You know, like, I wouldn't even understand what it was. It was just, I had to do it. You know, it was just like, so if you love it, you can do that. You know, it's not so hard. It's marathon training to a certain extent, and you have to want it like that you're willing to do that, and that's a lot of discipline that people don't think about, like 10 to 12 almost every day on top of. Right.
And it's something you love, it's something you want, so it's totally worth it, but it's, you know, like when you're doing it, like I was being asked yesterday, like, you know, what was that like? I'm like, I don't know that I could do it again. I probably could, because like you said, you figure out how to pull that rabbit out of your hat, basically.
Right.
But I'm like, when I look back at it, I'm like, I don't know how I did it. I just did, you know, like.
Yeah, you don't. I
there was
don't know
no
how
other
I
way.
did it back then. But you know, you read that about many people in many fields, especially successful people. You know, people don't realize that Bill Gates was in high school when he used to get up and get on his bike and ride his bike over to the University of Washington and work on their mainframe from 4 to 6 a.m. because that was the only time they would let him use it. And he did
Jack
that,
Carson's
and then he'd come
a similar
home and
kind
go
of story
to school.
with NASA.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that I feel like the great work is that work that you can't do, that you cannot not do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like it's.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so then glamour can help you get to that. Even if it is just you want a great relationship or a family or you want to make the best cookies in the world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something huge. It could just be the things that you're most desiring in your life, and that glamour can help you get that because you're bringing out more of who you are, what makes you interesting and exciting, right?
Absolutely. And the more that people see that and you see that, first off, when you open yourself up like that, when you're really in touch with that, because that, when you are really in touch with what makes you interesting and exciting, there's not a lot of room for low confidence and low self-esteem. You're going to have bad days. Everyone has bad days.
Right.
That's going to happen. But overall, there's not a lot of room for that. And when you start to do that, you're kind of lit up like a Christmas tree, you know, like the universe notices, your ancestors, your spirits, your goddesses, whoever you work with, start to notice that, and doors start opening more there. And then like on a more sort of quote unquote mundane level, more doors start opening in your regular life. And sometimes it starts out, you know, small, where you're getting like bits of cheese from the cheesemonger for next to nothing, or you know,
right.
things like that, or just that you're having more interesting conversations. But it's when you are open like that, when you are bringing those qualities of yourself out and proudly out as much as possible, people and the universe take notice, and then there's more opportunities, more people helping you to get to where you're trying to go with that, offering advice that maybe they wouldn't have, but they feel that connection with you. So they're going to, you know, tell you something that maybe they wouldn't tell just anybody, you know?
Oh, exactly. I agree. Kind of anything that helps you be more of authentic and more of who you are, you get in the flow, you know? And the universe, you're just being you. And I think that really helps things. And I think too, on top of that, you do something, you stop sabotaging yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say that you get out of your own way a lot better, because now you have your eye on the prize, the great work, whatever that is. And like you said, however big or small, it's still great to you, and that's totally valid. And once you start getting out of your own way with having your eye on the prize and not constantly, like you said, self-sabotaging, things start moving and shifting.
Exactly. They do. And, you know, okay, so I'm going to stop right here because we're going to open up the lines to see how fast things went. It's already been halfway through the show. And
yes, very quickly. I love
know.
it.
See, I told you I could have you. I've like 90 pages of notes. We could talk for, no, I'm not going to. Anyway, if anybody has a question out there for Deborah, please call in 949-313-8880. So ladies, get your glam on, or if you want to know how to get your glam on. If you just have a question about anything, though, we've talked about, even generally speaking, Deborah's an interesting person. She can answer a lot of stuff that's off the subject of the book, even, I think. So even about magic or anything like that, please feel free to call in now, 949-313-8880. And don't be scared, because a lot of people, what happens is the show will be over and I'll get 97 emails that like, I had a question. So if that's the case, Deborah, how can anyone find you if they want to?
Absolutely. The best way to find me for my shop, my social media, my blog, where to buy my book is my blog. And my blog is www.charmedfinishingschool.com.
Oh, I love it. Charmed ED. I love it. Charmed with an ED, CHARMED.
Yeah.
Okay, charmedfinishingschool.com, right?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
That needs to be like a television show. Like,
I feel like that would be amazing.
Show? Do you know that? Remember that show Charmed? That with the three girls, or Alyssa Milano?
Yeah.
Was that it? Yeah, yeah. Not like that, but just like a series like that. I didn't want you to do that show, but it's a cute show, but it wasn't, I wasn't having you, but I mean, like a series. That was like a weekly series, wasn't it? Like a.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Charmed Finishing School. Could be like Harry Potter for girls.
Yes, exactly. Where you're using your glamour and your moral compass to go fight all kinds of things. No, I like that.
Oh, I love it. I think it's awesome. Okay, I got off the subject here. I'm sorry. That's how you can find you. And then I think you also have your own, like, DeborahCastellano.com too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just easier to remember the Charmed one, I think.
CharmedFinishingSchool.com. But I want to spell your name for people too, because it's not Deborah. Deborah's spelled a million different ways. And it's Deborah. And the last name is Castellano. So either way, but I would go to Charmed Finishing School first too, because it just sounds like more fun. So I would. I think it should be a series. I'm very psychic. So let me just say, one day, you knew me when. You have to have me on your show. Yes. You have to have me on your show. If anyone has a question, 949-313-8880. Don't wait. It doesn't help. Ask now. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep talking. Now, there was a chapter that we have a caller, so I'll get back to that chapter in a second. So here we go. Hello, caller. Hello. Hi, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Can
Welcome.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Do you have a question for Deborah?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I've enjoyed the show so far. And one of my favorite books is Positive Magic. I believe it was published in the 80s. And the theme is you have more power if you do your work with another person. The more voices, the more powerful. And I wondered if Deborah agreed with that.
I do to a large extent, because it's really hard to build an empire solely on your own. My only disagreement is sometimes if you have too many cooks in the kitchen and too many differing opinions, it can be easy to lose sight of your great work because you kind of get bogged down in all of that. But I think, you definitely need a lot of people to form your revolution.
Okay. And may I ask another question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. So a friend of mine in the past, we would get together during the full moon and we would do our work. And it seemed as though everything we intended for other people came to pass, but we struggled with our own intent for ourselves. And is that unusual or is that not unusual?
It's a little unusual, but I mean, my first thought there is, did you guys try to set your intention and then have the other person do the work just because maybe that would have worked, just because maybe of the way your egregore, your group mind was set that, and sometimes it's easier to move stuff for other people and it's harder to move stuff for yourself just because you're obviously so close to the issue. So if you really trust the other person you're working with, I would maybe swap, you know what I mean? Like if you wanted to say, get a new car and she wanted, like a vacation villa, that you would work on the villa for her and she would work on the car for you and then see where you got with that. But it can be hard to do stuff for yourself, especially if you're worried that you're asking for too much, which generally speaking, that's hard to do.
Okay.
It's hard to actually ask for too much. Oh, my pleasure.
Good to know. Good
right.
to know. Thank you.
Well, good. Thank you, caller, for calling in. I appreciate it. And thank you for listening tonight.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Well, that was cool. Like that. Awesome,
Yes.
Deborah. Good question, too. I like that because really honestly, I didn't know, sometimes I like to keep what I'm working on to myself, but
Yes.
I feel like it needs to be all there first, and then I can talk about it. But I can also see
that
how
birthday wish thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's where it gets interesting working with other people. Maybe you don't want to tell them like what the full plan is, so to speak, but you might want to tell them like whatever you needed help with, and let them know like a piece of it. I think it's okay to give maybe a piece, but I'm with you. Like when I was waiting to sign my contract, like nobody knew,
No, and I don't talk about that either. And I also don't talk about my next book ever until, it's signed and done and gone, and then I'll talk about it. But I don't talk about it while I'm doing it. I won't talk about another book when I'm writing it, and I will not read anybody else's work when I'm writing. It's just
because I'm like that too. Yeah. I feel like I start to get muddied up in what everyone else is doing, and I start to get like very
exactly.
Well, so that's cool that you do that too. Yeah,
right, exactly. And one of the question was part of the answer that you just did was that it's hard to ask for too much. That's interesting because I think that's where a lot of things don't manifest for people because they really don't buy into that they can really have it. Do you know?
Yeah, that they don't feel that they deserve it. And, like not to get too like secrety about it, because that sometimes goes to weird places. But, like you have to feel to a certain extent, you do need to feel like worthy of it, and you are. I mean, maybe you won't get exactly what you ask for. It's sort of like, when you were little and I asked for a telescope and I got a microscope, like for Christmas, and that kind of stuff will happen on occasion.
Close.
But it's okay to dream big.
Yeah. Well, that's right, because I part of what I say is there's nothing spiritual about playing small. I mean,
yeah.
Let's be big or go home. It's like, come on, let it out. And it doesn't have to be that you want to be Bill Gates or Gwyneth Paltrow or whatever. It just has to be what you want that you deserve, and that can be big too. And that bigness doesn't have to necessarily be monetary or anything. It just can be a big, beautiful house somewhere. I mean, who are you not to have it? That's how I feel. It's like, who are you not to have it? And who are you not to be a great best-selling writer? If not you, then who? And who are you not to have a TV show called Charmed Finishing School? Why not?
Exactly. And you don't know till you try. And like, let's say it doesn't manifest exactly the way you had hoped, but it manifests something else really cool that you're totally into, then it was totally worth it.
Exactly.
If it's all just these small kind of like, oh God, help me with my electricity bill, it's hard to really get ahead, and I think that it's important to keep your eye on that and to not be afraid to ask for what you want. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like you can waste a lot of energy doing that too. It's like people who tell me they manifested a parking space or flowers or something. And I'm like, oh God, just park anywhere and walk. Use that energy for something else. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, definitely.
I got it. Well, that's good. But you know what?
You have proof of concept. Now you need to do something bigger with it,
exactly.
and get to that next place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So really, this is Glamour Magic is the name of the book by Deborah Castellano. And it just has really great tips for bringing out the glamour in you, which, I loved. I just thought, you're right. 'Cause it's more than beauty. It is that conviction for the great work, but then expressing yourself so that you're, I think, being your essential self, your true self, and just bringing that out. That, you know, and like you said, with a code of ethics involved too. So you're not, you know, going off the deep end here. You're just bringing out who you really are and loving who you are for what you are, exactly the way you are. Right?
Absolutely. And I mean, the code of ethics part is so important, because at the end of the day, you have to sleep with you at night. I don't have to sleep with you, you know, like, I can't tell you what you're okay with. You know what you're okay with, and you've got to operate within those boundaries. Now, you're going to transgress on occasion, because we do that in regular life. Like, we say something we shouldn't have said, or, you know, we did something really kind of mean that we regretted, you know, or something like that. You sued someone that you didn't really want to sue, you know, like, it's okay to make those mistakes, because then you really realize where your compass is, because that's life. Every time you interact with the world, there's always the chance for stuff like that to happen. But yeah, part of it too is like you said, it's figuring out also your style and how to translate that. Like, I work in a very conservative corporate environment, and very technically speaking, the quote unquote uniform would be heels, dress pants, a button-down dress shirt, a blazer, certain jewelry, my hair done a certain way, my makeup done a certain way. And that looks fantastic on a lot of women, and it's a totally valid style choice that works for so many people. But for me, it makes me want to curl up and die. I mean, it's just not the way I present to the world. But I'm fine with, like, cardigans and cupcake skirts and vintage style jewelry, which is also still very professional in that environment, and just a very teeny bit boho. But I couldn't wear what I wear to, like, a pagan pride day to work. I can't express myself that way there, but I can figure out how I can express myself at work in a way that makes it okay to get through the day. And then I make sure I have things like pagan pride where I can just go all out and really express myself.
Right, exactly. And part of it is that you're making yourself happy within those reasons. Like, you're even in a corporate environment, because, like, you can't make everyone happy. You have to make yourself happy. But even when you have boundaries, you're doing that in a you know, a different kind of way. You're finding a way to make that work within that boundary, which I like. That's good.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, so you're not just caving in and trying to look like, you know, Miss Corporate America without, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we're running out of time. If there's any other callers out there, we're running down the last few minutes here. Well, maybe 5 or so. But if anybody has a quick question, 949-313-8880. Otherwise, I encourage you to buy the book, Glamour Magic by Deborah Castellano, and your website is Charmed, or it's your blog actually, right? CharmedFinishingSchool.com. And the book is great. Like I said, there's lots of exercises. There was one chapter I loved. Revolution starts in your boyfriend's wife's bedroom.
Yes, that's the popular one.
It's a great title. I mean, that's an awesome, that could be a whole book.
It really could be. And in some cases it kind of has been, because going back to the whole Anne Boleyn thing, Anne Boleyn was a lady in waiting to Catherine of Aragon. Catherine of Aragon was married to Henry VIII at the time, and she was, your duties as a lady in waiting would be things like dressing her and, you know, getting her ready for bed and, you know, being entertaining and things like that. And she was doing that while she was basically stealing her husband, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, but that was an interesting chapter. It is. And the other one I liked was failure is always an option, because, you know, sometimes that's something we need to, everything leads you to something else too, I think. So even, if something's not going the way you think it is. Like you said, you might ask for something and you might get something else, but it's equally, if not better, something that will take you where you wanted to go without you knowing it, I think.
I agree completely. I call that like putting a tomato in a blender and getting a lamp out instead. Well, maybe you really needed that lamp, you know.
Wow, never happened to me.
I agree, and I think and I think some people are afraid to declare their great work because what if you quote unquote fail? And like you said, most of the time failure isn't a dead end. You don't just like lay down and die like in a video game. You know, there's going to be something else. It might not be an immediate Oprah aha moment, but eventually you'll figure out a path, and then maybe that's part of your kind of origin story, you know?
Right, exactly. And usually that's why I tell people don't get too some people bang their heads on a wall to make something work that's definitely not working. And you know, there's something better always, but you have to get out of your own way to do that, you know? Sometimes we just have to step aside, and it could be even better. But you know, we have to open ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to have trust and faith. And the other thing you talked about a lot in the book was austerity, which was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people in the occult kind of community don't like the idea of austerity because a lot of, again, homeworld religions are big on it, like Catholicism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Judaism and Islam as well. And a lot of people don't like the idea of that because we're supposed to be very like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know?
Right.
But you have to give to get. And it can be really, again, really grueling to do austerity. And because you're choosing to do this, you're choosing to give up whatever you've decided. But I find when you get into that hollow of that hunger, you really start seeing things really clearly.
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's a fascinating book. I loved it. And I do, like I said, highly recommend it. Glamour Magic, the Witchcraft Revolution to get what you want. I don't know, any final words out there for, I think really basically, if I had to sum up the book, I would say that it's a great way to fall in love with yourself. And I think when you do fall in love with yourself, you're glamorous. You bring out those things, you know?
I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great end thought. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I like that
for
too.
me, I was like, oh no, that's wonderful. For me, it's always like something crazy coming out of my mouth.
No.
I would say, like I said, that it's worth exploring. My favorite phrase with this is like a lot of people want to disregard glamour, but you're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like, why would you throw one of them on the floor? Don't throw down your knives.
Right.
You know, take it with you. Use this as a weapon. Get to where you're trying to go.
Right. Exactly. And why shouldn't we? And also, again, like I said, really, it's just honing in on the things that are interesting and exciting about yourself. So then you're really just expressing more of who you really are. You know, the true you, the real you, you know?
Yeah. And the more you get in touch with that, the more powerful you become.
Right. And
it's impossible not to.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a good point, too, just quickly at the end here, because some of that is not good. Some of that's our dark side and our bad girl that's truly bad. But even you even have to be in touch with that, because when you are, you can embrace it and then not really be denying anything, you know, because that's not good either. But it's like
absolutely.
Right. We all have that side to us too. The bad witch, the you know, that part, that side, the dark side. But you can embrace that too, but just keep it low and not let it out. And know it's a part of you, of who you are. And
you learn how to channel it. You learn how to channel it in constructive ways instead of destructive ways. And when you don't embrace that and you're not honest with yourself about those less pleasant qualities about yourself, you're not being true to yourself. And it's harder to channel it if you're telling yourself that it's not really happening.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. Well, I loved it. And again, your blog is charmedfinishingschool.com, soon to be an exciting weekly series on Channel 5. Well,
fingers crossed.
Hey, you never know. Keep blogging, girl, okay? Just keep doing what you're doing. I love it. Just keep it out there. And when it happens, you can call me and tell me I told you so. Okay?
I will. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
This
has
welcome.
been a blast.
Thank you so much for calling in. And I did have a blast too. It's a great show. Thank you so much, Deborah. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night. Care. Good night. That was a great show, everybody. I enjoyed that. Again, charmedfinishingschool.com is her blog. My website is servettehassan.com, ServetHassan.com. See, I can still spell my name without flubbing it. Anyway, email me at servettehassan.com if you have any comments or questions. I love hearing from all of you, and I appreciate all the people that do call and write in and everything else. And lots of changes are coming next year. I'm not there yet, but I will be with blogs and podcasts and etc. But in the meantime, I'm going to do classes online too in the future. But in the meantime, you can email me, and I'm also available for private consultations, and anything else I'm working on or doing workshops, etc., will be posted on the website as well. And again, I just want to say, part of the reason I was drawn to this is because I'm open to all spiritual practices, and I liked this because she talks a lot about bringing out your true self, your authentic self, and falling in love with who you are and accepting yourself exactly the way you are for what you are without any, just now, exactly the way you are now in this moment. And that's so important because that brings all kinds of things in and helps you get out of your own way and manifest and forget the law of attraction and all that stuff. If you do that, you get what you want naturally. You just get in that flow and it comes to you. And that's why I always end the show with be you to the full, because that's what's really beautiful. And I will talk to you all next week. We've got another great show lined up with Roberta Grimes, and I will see you then. Thank you so much for listening in, and take care. Good night.